Hi, welcome to episode 442 of the Corner of Knit and Tea. My name is Laura. I'm also known as Fluffy Kira on Instagram, Twitter, and Blue Sky. And I have a blog called thecornerofknitandtea.com, which is where every episode show notes will be. And I have an Etsy shop called The Corner of Knit and Tea as well. And that is where I sell my handspun yarn and knitting patterns. Hi, how are you? It is Monday, September 25th. I can hardly believe we are at the end of September already. I hope that you are having a good week so far. I have been joking that I feel almost a little hungover. Last week, I went away for several days. I went up to, it's not super far, it's about 100 miles away. I went to Hamilton, Missouri and helped Missouri Star, which is the company that I work for, celebrate their 15th anniversary. They throw a big party. It's called Birthday Bash, and it is for 4 days, and there are deals in the stores and balloons everywhere and fun activities and all kinds of things, and it is just kind of a big party. And they ask all of, well, they don't really ask all of us. We volunteer to go in and help out. So there is the staff that is there full time. Hamilton, Missouri is a little bit north of Kansas City. Like I said, it's about 100 miles from my house, but I live on the south side of Kansas City. So it's about 50 miles north of downtown. And it's just this tiny little town out there. It actually is the birthplace of JCPenney, or the founder of JCPenney's. Missouri Star Quilt Company started there 15 years ago, is as just a small storefront, and now it is a huge part of the town. There are tons of different stores and lots of other fun things. There's an art supply store, a yarn store, a couple cafes. Like, it's just a fun little place to be. And so last week I worked in the stores. On Wednesday, I worked in a store as a greeter, and then on Friday, I worked in the main store cutting fabric at the back of the store all day. So I got to learn some new skills. I got to meet lots and lots of quilters, and for me, it was super fun. I generally work remotely. I work in marketing, and I love what I do, but of course, I don't get to see a lot of people. So it was really fun to be up there and kind of be a part of the bigger mission, and I got to meet a lot of the people who work there, both who work in town and those of us who work outside of town remotely. They do have a decent number of people who work even out of state and who flew in for the event. So it was super fun, but it also was a lot of time with people and a lot of excitement and a lot of time on my feet, and I just am not used to that anymore. So I came home and took lots of naps this weekend. And my crafting was, I did some crafting, but I didn't do a ton of crafting. So unfortunately this week is still going to be a little light. I have some things to show you, and some things to talk about what will be upcoming. So it was a really fun week. It was nice to do something a little bit different in the schedule. The weather was beautiful. We did have some rain on Friday morning, but otherwise it was beautiful. It was in the 70s and 80s, and it was a lovely week. And coming home, I did a bunch of other things sort of on the way home. Last Friday was a fountain pen party. Some of you know that in my alternate time, I also write for a friend's blog about pens and desks, office supplies, and I have gotten active in the fountain pen community over the last several years. And one of the fountain pen makers, Pelikan, it's a German company, and every year in September they host, well, not during the pandemic, but otherwise every year in September they host what they call the Pelikan Hub, which is a party on Friday evening, and it's Friday evening all over the world, so everybody sort of celebrates in their own time zone. And so on Friday, as I was coming back from Hamilton, I stopped and went to the pen party, and like I said, by Saturday I needed a good long nap. So lots of exciting things, and easing into another week. This morning came early, but I am working through things. So today I'll start with the drink, although I don't have much left. I was drinking coffee. I needed a little extra shot of caffeine. I'm drinking it in my friend of the pod mug, which is Crooked Media Podcasts. And I was drinking some of my favorite coffee, which is vanilla hazelnut. I've been drinking it forever. It's decaf cold brew. I guess it's just vanilla. decaf cold brew vanilla, although I drink it hot, and it is from Cameron's Coffee. I'll put a link in the show notes. But it is not new. I just needed something good as a pick-me-up. So let's talk about what I've been working on. I have 2 knitting projects that are either on the needles or needle adjacent. So the first thing that I talked to you about last week was I talked to you about a colorwork sweater that I'm going to be knitting as a sample. And the pattern is Antique Flora by Wool and Pine, and it is a lovely top-down yoke sweater with very intricate floral motif colorwork in the yoke, and then actually this one goes down a little bit below the yoke and goes onto the sleeves as well. And so last week I showed you I had wound up all the yarn and I was getting ready to swatch. And so I haven't done more than swatch, but I thought I would show you the swatches because I had to do 2. And tonight I am going to kind of figure out my math and get myself started on the sweater. So by next week I will have more to show you, but I thought I would show you what I did. So I talked a little bit about Antique Flora, and I am using colorways from Zen Yarn Garden. This is all on their superwash superfine fingering, which is I think a 90-10 blend of superwash superfine merino and nylon, and the pattern basically called for sort of a solid in the background, and then the way they did, well, so the pattern calls for something a little bit different than the way I'm knitting it. I explained this a little bit last week. The pattern calls for a DK weight for the background, and then the colorwork section is made kind of into a gradient, at least in the pattern, by holding 2 colors together in fingering weight and marling them. And so the first thing that we did is I held, Zen Yarn Garden, for whom I am knitting this, sent me yarn, and they decided rather than send me DK yarn, they would have me hold fingering weight doubled throughout the entire sweater so that the gauge would be exactly the same, because their DK isn't quite the same as their fingering doubled, and so we decided we would get around it for that. So this is the solid colorway, and this is a teal. And then originally we were going to marl 2 colors together, and that was the teal one of a kind, which is kind of a variegated teal, and then the teal speckled, which is, or teal spatter, which is a speckled colorway dyed with the same colors, but it's very, very white. And I expressed a little bit of concern last week that I didn't know how these 3 colors were going to play together when I went ahead and used them in colorwork. So the first thing that I did, and I just pulled a small section of the chart to use as a swatch, and I pulled the section of the chart that actually didn't, for this section, I pulled the section of the chart that didn't have any, so it is a yoke chart, and it starts at the top and moves down, so it has increases built in. But what I did is I selected a section of the chart that didn't have any increases because I didn't need them for my swatch, and I started swatching, and this is what I came up with. Now this looks a little messy because what I was doing is I was knitting it and then pulling the loops back around, and then I snipped the loops so that I could lay this out flat. And what I found was that while it does show up a little bit, it's kind of subtle, and there are sections where the color work actually does not show up, where like here I was holding my lighter color, but you can't see all of those, and so it's very subtle. And because the color work chart is so intricate and it's floral and it's really fun, I really wanted it to show up more. So I went ahead and showed this to the artistic director at Zen Yarn Garden, who kind of is over all the samples, well, she's the lead dyer and the artistic director, and I said, what do you think? And she said, well, I like it, it's subtle, but maybe it's not going to be the best. I might have to go back to the drawing board. And I said, well, let me try another sample and just hold this one doubled. There won't be any marling, but I think it would be a nice contrast to the teal background because you've got all these bits and bobs of blues and teals in there, and I think that will show up really nicely. So that was the first swatch. The second swatch, I went ahead and knit this, and this is really beautiful. Now I realize that there is, it is a very, it is a very stark contrast, but I do think that the speckles make it just a little bit lighter, and you can see, like, for instance, there was a dark strand there, so even though it is all color work, like, you're still getting a little bit of the different colors in there. So I think this is what we're going to go with, and interestingly enough, I really, really, really dislike knitting swatches this way. I understand that it is the appropriate way to knit a swatch to get a really good idea of gauge, because you will be knitting your sweater in the round in color work, and so working back and forth is not the most accurate way to get gauge. But on this one, I just didn't want to cut more yarn because I didn't want to run out of yarn. I already do think I'm going to be close on things. So for this one, I actually knit color work backwards, and it wasn't as hard as I thought it would be. I would not want to do it on a whole sweater. I would definitely do it in the round and steek if I were going to do it again. But on this one, I knit the color work backwards, and I still have pretty good tension both on the front and the back. So I think it came out pretty well, and I really like this one, and I showed this to the art director, and she said, yep, that's the one. So this evening I am going to, I don't know if I'm going to pull this out or not, but this evening I am going to sit down and start on the colorwork sweater. So you will be able to see more of that next week. I should get into at least some of the colorwork this week. I don't know that I'll have the yoke done next week because it is a pretty extensive chart. But I should at least have something to show you, and it'll be all bunched up on the needles. I believe the pattern calls for a 4 and a 6. I have dropped to a 3, a 4, and a 5. So 4 and 6 were to be used for the smaller needle to be used for the ribbing, and then the larger needle to be used for the body. But of course, I tend to go down a needle size generally from the recommended pattern because my gauge tends to be a little bit looser, but I also tend to go up a needle size for the color work. So basically I'm going to be using a 3, 4, and 5. I'm going to use a size 3 for the which is one size smaller than the pattern recommends for the ribbing and kind of edges of everything. I'm going to use the 4 for the main body, and then I'm going to use the 5 as opposed to a 6 for the color work, because I think that will keep my gauge even between the 4 and the 5. That is exactly how I knit these swatches, and so all I need to do is measure them tonight and make sure that I am on gauge, and then I will get started. So I think that's it for modifications and what I want to talk about this one, and hopefully I will have more to show you next week. So while I was on my trip, I did actually not work on Thursday at Birthday Bash, and so I was staying in a hotel up in the area. So Hamilton, like I said, is about 50 miles from the city. Hamilton is a very small town, and it's right next to another town called Cameron, no relation. So Hamilton is right next to Cameron, and there were no hotel rooms in either Hamilton or Cameron. So I ended up staying 20 miles south in Kearney, and right next to Kearney is another town called Excelsior Springs, and there's a yarn store in Excelsior Springs. So on Thursday, I worked from the hotel, and I went over to Excelsior Springs on my lunch hour and visited the yarn shop there because I had never been. And I picked up 2 skeins. The fun thing about the yarn shop is on one side of the shop they have the commercial yarns, and they have Barocco and Cascade and a few others, and then on the other side of the shop they have indie dyed yarn. And so I picked up a skein of indie dyed yarn, and I love this, and I cast on last night. So I found 2 skeins, one that I thought would make great socks for my mom, and another that I really wanted for socks for me, but then I figured out that there is enough yarn in it that I can make socks for Roxy as well. So I picked up it's a sock kit that came with 2 minis. So this is the main colorway, and these are the minis, and the yarn dyer is called New Garden Yarns. So, and this is the logo, and they are at a dyer here in Missouri. And this is, hang on 2 seconds, let me pull let's pull the actual labels. So this is New Garden Yarns, and this is their perennial yarn base, which is a 75% merino, 25% nylon, and this is called a Snow Day sock set. So that's my 2 blues and my red. And so what I decided, and the blue is, I should say these are generous skeins. This is 100 grams to 463 yards. So that is the full skein, and then the small skeins are each 94 yards, 20 grams. So that is a lot of yarn. That's almost 600 yards. Well, it's more than 600 100 yards worth of yarn. So I decided that I could get socks for both me and Roxy out of this. So I decided to use the blues for Roxy, and yes, I'm saving that bright pinky red for me. So I started knitting a sock for Roxy last night. I wound it up and got started, and I am at the gusset. I'm working on the, no, I'm sorry, I'm working on the heel flap. So this is what I have so far. And like I said, I used the blue. I'm going to use the blue for the cuffs and probably the toes. I don't know that I'm going to do the heels. And then I just have this speckle in here, which has all that bit of blue in there. And I think these are really sweet, and I'm really enjoying them. And my girl's favorite color is teal. I think this is so much more vibrant and fun than the other skein that I wound up from October House. I will use that skein at some other point in the future. But I decided that this was super fun and I wanted to knit these. And then I think as soon as I'm done with her pair, well, I guess I need to knit my mom's socks first, but then I will go ahead and cast on a pair for me. So I have about half a sock. Like I said, I'm working on the heel flap right now. And these are just my standard sock. It is a 52 stitch sock, 2x2 ribbing up at the top, and then just stockinette. I'm going to do I did a slip stitch heel flap, and I'll do the heel turn, and then just gusset and right down to a rounded toe. And so I hope that I'll have these off the needles fairly quickly for Roxy, because I still need to knit a pair for my mom, and I have hats for the kids as well. So I have lots to do in the next couple months before I see them for the holidays. But that is just a little bit of sock fun. And like I said, the red was what really, really sold me on it. And it is called, what did she call it? She called it Cheeky. And so that's going to be my sock, heels and toes, and this one. So I'm really, really excited about that. And I'm really, really enjoying that. And I am knitting it in I just realized that I didn't bring it, but I'm knitting it in my Halloween bag, the same bag that I showed you last week. I realized that it's time to pull out my Halloween Hello Kitty mug, because it's almost October and I'll only have a few weeks before Halloween. So yeah. So those are the only things that I have in knitting to show you today. What I took with me while I was away, and I did not do much knitting while I was away because I kind of crawled into bed every night and thought about it. I took some chicken feathers, and so I knit chicken feathers while I was away. I knew I needed to get it done, so I really just wanted to get it out of the way, and so that is what I did, and I didn't bring anything else with me. So yeah, so that's why there wasn't a lot of knitting this week. So let me take a quick sip of coffee, and then I'm going to move on to sewing and spinning. So this weekend when I got home, I decided that I wanted to sew up my jelly roll rug. And so I went ahead and worked on it over the course of a couple days, and I actually finished it today at lunch, and I'm done. So a jelly roll rug is where you take, it is sewing, and it is where you take a jelly roll, which is a pre-cut of fabric. It is 2.5 strips of fabric that are the width of fabric wide, so 2.5 by 40 to 44 inches, depending on how wide the fabric is. And the reason it's called a jelly roll is because they roll all of the fabrics up. They kind of stagger them slightly and roll them up to show all the fabrics. They're really pretty and exciting. And then they put a band around the center, and it looks like a jelly roll. It looks like if you had rolled up like a Swiss roll or had cinnamon in it. Like they're beautiful. And so what I did is I took one of those and I sewed the strips together end to end. I did sew them on the bias, but I sewed them together end to end to make one really long strip. So jelly rolls usually come with 40 to 42 strips. Mine came with 40. So it was 40 strips that were 40 to 44 inches long. You can do the math. That's 1,600 inches-ish, maybe more. And so then what I did was we sort of folded the jelly roll strips towards the center so there were no exposed edges, and I enclosed a thin layer of batting in there. And then what I did was I folded the outside edges in towards the center, and then I folded the whole thing in half, so everything was kind of in there in a like folded up nice and neat, and I sewed down the center of that little piece, which gave me kind of these tube strips. Like one side was the fold where the fabric was, and one side had kind of two openings. I'm not explaining this well, but then what you do is you start to coil them together, and what you end up with is something that looks like this. So this is my very first Jelly Roll rug. It is a little bit ripply at the edges, which means I didn't lay everything down as flat as I could have. But I think it's great for my first try, and I'm really happy with it. And this was just going to be a bath mat in our bathroom, like a mat in front of the sinks. So I'm really not concerned about the fact that it's not like 100% flat. So basically, I took the Jelly Roll as it came in order, which was a gradient. So you can see here we started at the center, and then I just started working my way outward, and these inner bits were a little bit hard because it's a little bit difficult to kind of sew on a curve, and it's a very tight curve, and you can see areas where I went back and kind of double stitched and whatnot. But overall, I think it came out really nicely. Now I used color changing thread. I don't know if you, yeah, you will be able to see it. I used color changing thread. It was in purples, so it had like a really, really, really light lavender that worked very well with the center. And then it had some really dark colors that worked best with the outside. But so you do see little bits and pieces where the lighter thread comes through, but that way I didn't have to change and match my thread throughout. And I really, really liked that. So I am super pleased with this. I have some photos. There will be, well, you saw a photo on the beginning slide. I took some photos out on my back deck, and I'm going to put this into my bathroom, and we'll see how we like it. My only concern right now about it is that there is no, I used to have a bath mat in there, and there is no like rubberized side, so I'm a little concerned that the rug might slip a little bit. So I haven't decided if I'm gonna get like a piece of like a rug slip mat to go underneath it, or if I might just puffy paint or add some kind of rubberized attaching to the bottom of this. So that's the only thing that I'm a little bit concerned about, but otherwise I just love this. I just bought a pack of, it was just purples. I guess it was called Amethyst. It was Wilmington Solids, and it was the Amethyst pack, Amethyst 40K, I think. And so it was just a variety of purple fabrics, and I'm just really, really pleased with this. I love how it came out. So that is going in my bathroom, and I don't know exactly what's next on the sewing machine. I did buy another quilt pattern and some fabric while I was in Hamilton this week, and I also had bought some Halloween fabric. So I basically have fabric and ideas for possibly 2 quilts, and I haven't decided what I will do yet. I might do the Halloween fabric in October, even though the quilt wouldn't be done for this Halloween, but I'll think about it and we'll see. So that is my sewing section. So finally, we'll just go to the little itty bitty bit of spinning. I do have the first bobbin finished on, this is Nitty and Color, and it was kind of a rainbow neon with black. I have the other half of it here. And I will be spinning on this week, and hopefully by the time I see you next, I might have these applied together. I don't know yet, but that is what I've got going on my spinning wheel, and it is just blowing out the monitor, but it is super fun. I didn't have a chance to spin much last week because I wasn't near my spinning wheels, and so I finished this one up on Sunday, and I'll work on this one on Wednesday, and maybe next weekend I'll get to ply. So I hope that you are doing well. I hope that you're having a good week so far. I am hoping to be more crafty this week than I have been the last couple, and I think I'm really going to dig in on some projects, particularly that colorwork sweater, and really try and make some progress on that this week. It's the weather is turning fall-ish. We are officially in fall as of September 21st, 22nd. That's where the autumn equinox is, and so I'm hoping the weather is going to cool down a little bit, and I'm going to want to cast on all the sweaters. And Nanny Swaymo is going to be here before we know it. I mean, it's almost October. So I hope that you are doing well, and I think I'm going to hop back to a few things that I need to get done before the end of the day. But I wish you much health and happiness and wonderful crafting in the week ahead. And I will say, as I always do, happy knitting, happy spinning, happy sewing, and happy sipping. I'll see you next time. Bye.